Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Vice President and General Manager, Hyperconverged Infrastructure, VMware, John Gilmartin.
It's great to be here. It's great to be back in Barcelona. I got to say, I love coming here every year because I get a chance to meet with so many different kinds of customers, so many different kinds of organizations, and really just sort of the diversity of feedback that I get when I come here is amazing. And it really has a really amazing and positive impact as we think as a product team about our future and the kinds of things we should be investing in. And so what I wanted to do today was spend a little time kind of reflecting back on the hyperconverged infrastructure market, or the HCI market, and kind of where we are as VMware and the kinds of things we're working on. I'll spend a little time talking about kind of where we are, and then we'll spend some time with Cormac Hogan talking about some of the things we're working on into the future and some demos. Right? But the main theme today is really about future-proof your infrastructure, and really about how HCI is evolving itself to help future-proof your infrastructure. And it's been interesting. I don't know if you realize this. This is the 5th anniversary since we launched vSAN. Right? And over that time, we've seen this product grow tremendously. We've seen the HCI market itself evolve tremendously and have just a really pretty amazing and fantastic impact with our customers who've gone down that journey with us. But I want to talk about sort of how that's evolving and talk today about how HCI and really sort of this move we see going from kind of core HCI to full stack HCI can really help unlock this idea of the hybrid cloud, which so many of us are trying to work towards. But also how the approach that we're taking at VMware can really help you get there and modernize at your own pace, right? And so take you from the investments you have today and move forward with those. But also how we're building this to be a platform for all workloads. A platform both for your traditional workloads that you're bringing forward into your future hybrid cloud, but also for the new applications and the new style applications that your developers are bringing onto that infrastructure as well. So that'll be the theme as I go through this. But I want to start, as so many do, talking about the context, right? And we use this word digital transformation a lot. We all hear this a lot. But this is a real thing, right? We see a lot of change happening across every organization. Drones, sensors, devices, mobile payments. There's a ton of change happening, and really every company at this point is a technology company, right? Every company is hiring software developers and thinking about how do they use technology to change their customers' experience and also to change their employee experience. For me, seeing McDonald's acquire an artificial intelligence company, sort of an amazing thing, right? Sort of this signal that every company, again, is now a technology company. And what does that mean for all of us who spend a lot of time thinking about the infrastructure to support that technology? Well, it means that we have to continue to think about how do we evolve our infrastructure to be more agile, right? And that's challenging, right? Traditional infrastructures, they tend to be fairly siloed. It tends to be hard to go respond quickly to the things the business is asking us to go do. And so this is where HCI has really got its start. This is where the market came from, really looking at how do we start to knock down some of these silos. And initially, it was really about breaking down the silos between compute and storage, right? Bringing servers and storage together, bringing that architecture together, and really starting to use that to go simplify the management and operations in the data center so you could respond more quickly to that business request, right? The great thing about this was this really allowed us to evolve from our existing virtualization investments and move forward from those, using the same tools we've been using to manage our virtualization environment and start managing now a combined compute and storage infrastructure as well. Right. And what we see now is that this simplified management model is leading to HCI being the fastest growing segment in really IT infrastructure. Traditional infrastructure is starting to decline, converged infrastructure is starting to decline, but over the next 3 years, we expect that hyperconverged infrastructure is going to grow 50%. Right? I think that's a great signal that HCI really is delivering some fantastic and transformational value into various customer and consumer environments. So we see this really amazing growth, and I touched on a little bit on why. But really, there's 3 big main reasons why HCI is winning, why it's growing faster than any other segment inside the data center. The first is this idea of operational simplicity. Really enables more generalist IT administrators to go manage a more broader set across multiple silos in the data center. The second is server-side economics, right? The idea that we can use sort of the cost curves that come from servers and start to use the CPUs and SSDs to go drive down the cost of the infrastructure itself. And also take advantage of the innovation cycles that come with servers, right? Bringing new technologies in more quickly into storage and into the compute side. But also allows us to future-proof our infrastructure, as we'll talk about today, which is really starting to unlock that hybrid cloud, really have an infrastructure that is future-proof for modern applications and for modern multiple cloud deployment models. So I dig into for a second into that one on HCI economics. That's where a lot of us start. Thinking about why should I adopt HCI? It does tend to start with this question of economics. This is some data coming from research that Forrester did, interviewing a number of VMware HCI customers. And this is across all kinds of industries: retail, software, education, and really looking at the comparison of HCI relative to traditional infrastructure. And you can see the kinds of data. This is self-reported back from the users. This is not us doing math. This is actual users reporting back what they've experienced. And you can see that they are reporting back a 72% reduction in their cost of ownership, right? So really transformative economics, if you think about that. And if you combine that type of economic benefit, which is return back to the business, with the management simplicity that HCI can bring, you can understand why, again, this is growing so much faster than the rest of the industry. What we're seeing now is things are changing, right? Core HCI has been the start. This is where the market really came from, bringing together compute and storage. But it's starting to evolve, right? And what we're really seeing is what people are trying to adopt now is really thinking about what we're terming or what we're calling full stack hyperconverged or full stack HCI. And really, because what people are trying to do is build a more private cloud or hybrid cloud infrastructure. And to do that, realizing that, hey, we need to start thinking about how do we incorporate network virtualization into this as well? How do we think about automating that infrastructure and bringing automation around those various components? How do we think about operating that environment as well? And so that's why we've invested as VMware in building a product we call Cloud Foundation, built upon this HCI architecture, but extending it out more to the full stack. And a big part of that is to go both deliver the experience to the business and the capabilities that you need around compute, storage, network, and management, but also to help all of you and all of us who build that infrastructure to have a much simpler way to go do that. And we focused a lot on standardizing architectures, validating integrated architectures across this full HCI stack, and using that to provide a highly repeatable way you can go stamp out private cloud infrastructure, while building in a set of automation and building in a set of security into the system so that you can spend a lot less time building infrastructure and a lot more time using that infrastructure to go deliver capabilities back to the business. Right? So this is a lot of our focus now as VMware is moving from this core HCI out to this full stack HCI and using that to help our customers go experience even more value through this kind of architecture. Pat talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I'm going to steal his analogy. What makes making a great meal or a great dinner is having great ingredients. And so what makes Cloud Foundation itself so great is not just what we've done around building this architecture and this automation, but also the great ingredients that go into it. VMware, again, number one in vSphere, number one in storage, networking, cloud management. There's incredible capabilities that we can bring into this Cloud Foundation infrastructure. We can expose, make it easy to go build and stand those up, but then use those to go deliver the kinds of value around security and automation that, again, the business is looking for. So we've seen this evolution from core HCI to full stack HCI, but what we're, again, continue to see is, what we hear from customers is that's not enough. Virtually every organization is thinking about, and in this data says 57%, but it continues to grow. Every organization is thinking about how do they run a more hybrid IT type environment? How do they take advantage of both their existing data center investments, but also investments that they can make in third-party providers, and think about how do I go manage across those? So the future is hybrid. Customers are moving to hybrid, and we see it. We need a strategy building out of HCI to move into the hybrid cloud. And so what we are bringing as VMware is a big focus on how do we deliver consistent infrastructure and consistent operations across the private cloud, the public cloud, and the edge. And this is where Cloud Foundation can play a key role, is bring this single unified platform across all three of those. So both inside your private cloud, also available through public cloud providers, but also available as deployments at the edge. Get a consistent infrastructure, highly automated, highly standardized, and then have a consistent way to manage and operate across those. And so if we've really invested in Cloud Foundation, we've really thought about all three of those deployment models as key targets for delivering this full stack HCI infrastructure. And really think that makes Cloud Foundation now really an ideal hybrid cloud platform. And there's a real benefit to building this kind of consistency across all these different environments. IDC did a little bit of research, and they say if you think about, if you want to migrate workloads and move workloads into the public cloud, and into a public cloud, you can either migrate those, or you can, if you have a standardized infrastructure, or if not, you can probably have to change those or re-architect them. You can save 69% lower cost by migrating across a consistent infrastructure relative to having to rework that application to move it into a different public cloud environment. So a huge advantage to having that consistent infrastructure and operations. And we see that in a lot of our customers now as we started to deploy Cloud Foundation out as part of our VMware Cloud and AWS service. See that customers are really kind of choosing two paths very often. One is they're thinking about maybe migrating out of their existing data centers or expanding their data centers into VMware Cloud and AWS, or they're thinking about modernizing their applications. And these two key use cases. And so we've invested really in Cloud Foundation thinking about how do we make it simple and fast and economical to move those applications into a VMware Cloud operated environment. So tools like HCX, which can optimize the WAN and optimize networking, but also just really make it easy to go move and migrate those workloads. But at the same time, focus on how can we help you then modernize those applications that are moving into that cloud environment through support for containers or support for GPUs and things like our recent acquisition of Bitfusion to provide sharing of GPUs across applications. We can help you go now to modernize those applications even as you migrate the more traditional applications at the same time. Because that's really been our strategy now with Cloud Foundation. Extend it beyond just being a private cloud infrastructure, extend it even beyond being a VMware managed infrastructure, but extend it also to be available across a broad set of our partners as well. We've had now this Cloud Foundation widely adopted by a number of cloud providers. We have 70 cloud verified partners. We have Microsoft has launched their Azure services for VMware. Google Cloud has announced, all the major cloud providers now have announced either delivery or intent to deliver cloud infrastructure based upon this architecture with Cloud Foundation. So again, for you, what that really means is a great deal of choice, the ability to go deploy either in your data center, a VMware managed data center, or a partner managed data center, and have a consistent infrastructure across all of those environments. And I think that's really pretty unique in the marketplace. You're not going to find that anyplace else. So ultimately, all this leads to is this idea that HCI and VMware HCI now can allow you to go modernize at your pace. We have core HCI, which delivers, as I said, key economic value and key benefits around simplicity. But you can move up from that core HCI to full stack HCI to really deliver that fully automated private cloud, right? And deliver that kind of more complete experience to your business, but then extend beyond that to a consistent infrastructure out to the hybrid cloud. Right? So really a hybrid cloud journey at the pace that makes sense for you and your business. So now let me talk a little bit about how HCI is being used across our customers and our partners. And what we've really seen is HCI has become a strategic infrastructure. Right? Similar, if you think back many, many years ago, I started at VMware 13 years ago. Virtualization really started more as sort of almost at the edge, right? It was, the edge of the data center, right? It was test and dev environments. It was sort of low-value workloads. And over time, as people gained confidence, it became a strategic infrastructure. We've seen the same pattern happen with HCI, right? HCI and vSAN started as sort of lower tier workloads, things that were not as business critical. But today we see it really becoming a strategic infrastructure for our customers and moving across the entire data center. And the kind of impact that you can see comes from that. The idea that you can really dramatically reduce your costs, that you can improve your provisioning times, or you can deliver projects faster to support your end users. Right? But I could talk a lot about various customers, but I think it'd be even better to have someone come up and talk about their experience. So what I'd like to do is welcome up Pierre Yves from TELUS to come and talk a little bit about their experience with VMware vSAN and VMware HCI.
Thank you, John.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's great to have you here. But maybe to start it off, you have a really super interesting organization. You do some really interesting things. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about what TELUS does for the audience here.
So thank you for having me here today. Great to be here at VMworld. TELUS does, first and foremost, large and complex IT systems for critical infrastructure providers. So you can think about train transportation, signaling, air traffic management, satellite provisioning, all these kind of products. And we serve that in space, aerospace, transportation, defense and security market. We are also one of the leading defense IT system integrator. And so with two legs, this helps us being both a customer of VMware, but also a partner of VMware.
Yes, so you got sort of both views of that, right?
Exactly.
So why don't you talk now a little bit about sort of HCI, Cloud Foundation for TELUS, both as a customer and as a partner.
So TELUS uses HCI technologies both internally and as a partner for our customers. When we use that internally, one of the big things we ask of VMware Technologies and our IT department is to make our engineering teams more proficient, more productive. We have 30,000 engineers inside TELUS, spread out around 10, 15 countries. Wow. They need to get together to get these big projects we are talking about. And so deployment of I would say, engineering platform is very important for us. And thanks to these technologies, your technologies, we managed to cut down deployment time and setup of an engineering platform for an engineering team from months to weeks.
That's great.
That's great. And two things also that are great about your technologies and what we specifically use. One is that due to the markets we address, we have people of various level of security clearance to access data. And so we have found that NSX micro-segmentation is a super great tool to be able to set up these zones of trust where only the people that are allowed to do it can access the data. It helps engineering teams very, very much. And, and the other part is that we do a lot of test bench, because the systems we are doing, they are critical systems, and if we fail, it's a problem.
Yeah. Right.
And so, thanks to these technologies, we have done even better because we used to do a physical test bench in 40 days, can now do that in 2 days, and set up that in 5 minutes. So, great improvement in productivity from the engineering part.
That's fantastic. That's great.
And you want me to talk about the partner part?
And then I was going to ask you, about the partner part. Keep going.
We partner in quite a lot of for environment. Just wanted to focus maybe on what we do in bringing cloud technology in the defense sector. And the things where what we do is that we set up edge micro data centers on the field for first response teams in terms of disaster recovery or army deployment. These micro data centers, they need to be connected to the HQ data center, so we need continuity, and they need to be installed very quickly. So speed of deployment is a big issue for our customer, and thanks to the VMware technologies, we used to be able to have that micro data center up and running in 1 week. Now it's half a day.
That's fantastic.
Great improvement.
Yeah. So it sounds like really some fantastic kind of different kinds of use cases. But just overall, how would you summarize the business value that TELUS has seen from HCI?
Once again, I will go with these two parts. On the big systems we are doing for the critical infrastructure operators, there is the fact that no customer is the same. Right. It's very specific, very sector specific, very, very different.
Yep.
And we have found that VMware set of technologies has the right balance between scalability, flexibility, standardizations, but also the ability for us to customize it to our customer needs. So we can really bring, with your technologies and what we bring, how we integrate them into these systems, the right solutions to the critical needs of the clients.
So it sounds like, hey, there's this balance of consistency, which helps you in terms of delivering quickly, but your customers and your users get the flexibility and the capabilities that they need.
Exactly. And for the other part, so this is great for our clients. If I go to the other part for our defense response teams, here, as I said, the thing which is important is speed of deployment. Yes. And especially what is important is speed of deployment for the first team that goes on the ground, because this is a decisive moment. You need to be able to intervene, to be operating at full capacity, right from the start, and this is where you bring quite a lot of value. The other one is ease of scalability, because when first the team comes in, they don't know how many people are going to be needed to answer to the threat. And so scalability is a very important issue.
So they can get in quickly, they can start small, and then they can grow.
Exactly. And they can do it, as one of your customers was saying, it works. So their job is not managing IT. Their job is helping to save lives.
Yes.
So having an IT that works is fast to deploy and resilient is really a must for them.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming up and sharing that story with us.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think you start to hear, this same theme here of, so HCI really powering critical applications and at scale, as Pierre was talking about. And this is some data that we've been collecting through our own kind of phone home capabilities, our customer improvement program. And you can see now that we've really brought HCI out to just very large scale, really critical infrastructure type of operations. And there's probably nothing more critical than some of the life-saving operations that TELUS is involved in. But we also see, HCI now really supporting all kinds of different applications, right? I think a lot of people have thought about, yes, traditional applications, I understand that. And we have a lot of support for things like, traditional databases. We've been the first certified platform, on Cascade Lake for SAP HANA. So a lot of investment there and a lot of things and a lot of great use cases. But we're also increasingly seeing support and needs and demands around containers. Obviously, we announced Project Pacific. That'll be incorporated directly into Cloud Foundation, obviously. But also, we're seeing a lot around cloud native and persistent services running on top of this infrastructure. So things like more modern databases, more modern applications. And so I want to bring up another partner to talk about a little bit about their experience here. And I'm going to welcome Clint Smith, who's our Senior Vice President of Corporate Development at DataStax. Clint, come and join me up here. Thanks for coming up here, Clint. Great to see you. So, let's start off. We've had a great partnership. You've been doing some really interesting things together. Maybe you can tell the audience just a little bit more about what customers are doing with DataStax.
Absolutely. So I was pleased on that slide to see the DataStax logo and the Cassandra logo. DataStax is the company behind the Cassandra open source database, and developers love Cassandra. Developers love Cassandra when they're building something that needs high availability. Our masterless architecture means no downtime. Developers love Cassandra when they're going to scale. We have examples of databases of more than 100,000 nodes in production.
That's great.
Answers the scale problem. And Cassandra developers love the speed. So the speed is in microseconds instead of milliseconds. And the DataStax creates an enterprise product with additional features that enterprise developers like. And really the competitive advantage of the last several years has been around multi-data center deployments. We're the best database for multi-data center deployments. And you know what that means for today and for the future? It means multi-cloud deployments.
Yes, it does. Yeah, so it's great. I realize that we have over 100 joint customers already, right? So why don't you tell me a little bit about why do they deploy DataStax on VMware?
Yeah. Fundamentally, our customers have been successful for many years with DataStax Enterprise running on HCI and vSAN. And it comes down to this. They want the power and performance of a distributed system, but they want the simplicity and efficiency of central management. And our products together deliver that. I can share a couple examples. So one, you choose Cassandra because you want high availability. But using the HCI infrastructure, administrators and operators can automate things like operating system failures and maintenance and rebuilds. All of that can be automated So you take a highly available database with even higher availability in the infrastructure. They love that. And then the second thing is scalability. You choose Cassandra for scaling. Well, with HCI, you can scale out in different ways. With Cassandra, you just add more machines. But with HCI, you can add machines, you can replicate and clone a data center, or you can add CPU or DRAM to existing nodes. They love that flexibility.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Can I share an actual customer story?
I would love for you to share a customer story.
We have an EMEA customer, shared customer, and I love the story. It's Danske Bank from Denmark. Traditional bank, formed in 1871. They needed a mobile payment system this decade. They started with the tools they knew. It was a mainframe and a relational database. And that worked for the first version of the app. But then they looked at their projections for the adoption, and they started getting really scared about complexity and cost and the ability to scale this infrastructure. They decided they needed a modern architecture. They chose HCI, DataStax Enterprise. This app became the most popular payment method in Denmark. It's installed on 90% of the smartphones in Denmark, used by 80% of the citizens.
Wow.
And they have enough belief in the infrastructure that they're expanding to Finland and Germany with this mobile payment app. Traditional institution, modern app, our products.
Yeah, they were able to modernize their infrastructure pretty quickly and effectively.
Absolutely. So right now they're in 3 data centers. They're experimenting with Cloud Foundation, and they want to see whether they can use that to go from 3 data centers to burst to the cloud.
That's fantastic. And so actually, you talk about cloud. So how are your customers and DataStax customers thinking about hybrid cloud?
Yeah. Almost all of our customers are looking for hybrid-ready products.
Yep.
And what I think when we talk to them, what we hear, and I don't know if it resonates with this room, but what we hear from them is they have these dual mandates. One mandate is to leverage the existing infrastructure in the data center that has served them well, but move to the cloud as soon as possible. And what they're looking for is hybrid solutions from companies like ours to be an on-ramp to the cloud. They want to migrate to the cloud, but wouldn't it be great if it were tools and technologies that their teams understood and could use, rather than trying to master the nuance of every single Ali Cloud and Google Cloud and AWS. Use some tools and have confidence in and migrate to the cloud with them. Yeah, so I think of us as an on-ramp to the cloud.
Yeah, so sort of take what you know and sort of expand and grow out of that,
yeah,
right? And get the capabilities that you need.
Yep.
So what's next for DataStax and VMware?
So we want to keep listening to customers. We have 3 engineers in the innovation part of the solutions exchange, so please come talk to us. We're going to take what we hear from customers and work with your technical team and build the products they want. And I think of Pat's keynote yesterday. He had that amazing statistic about all the new apps that are going to be built in the coming years. I really hope that your technologies and our technologies can be the key ingredients in those applications.
I think they will. Awesome. Clint, thanks so much. Appreciate the story. Thank you.
Okay.
Again, so really showing how HCI has become this platform for modern applications, and really ties in with this idea if we're going to build a modern sort of private cloud infrastructure for developers, these are the kind of applications they're going to be looking to deploy, and they need to be able to go deploy those effectively and manage them effectively as well. So I'm going to close my part of this session just by recapping the 3 main ideas here, which is really what we're looking at with HCI is the ability to start to unlock your private cloud. Use the full stack HCI with Cloud Foundation to actually go build a consistent infrastructure across your private cloud out to your public cloud. Second is modernize at your pace. The ability to go start small with core HCI, with vSAN, bring together compute and storage, and start to grow out to this full stack HCI over time, and then to the hybrid cloud, starting from what you know out to these future capabilities. And then deploy all workloads across a hyperconverged infrastructure, both traditional workloads and these new modern cloud-based workloads as well. But what I'd like to do now is start to transition now to start to look forward, and I'd like to welcome to the stage Cormac Hogan, who is one of our chief technologists at VMware. Please give him a warm welcome here. Cormac, thanks for coming up, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Well, thanks to Bear Grylls. I just have to move swiftly along because we're sort of running about 10 minutes late, I think, but hopefully we'll make up the time. So there's 3 areas that I'm going to talk about. The first of these are modern applications. Then we're going to talk about some new infrastructure offerings that we have, not just from our hardware vendors, but also things that we're building ourselves. And then John is going to come back on stage, and we're going to go through management and operations. Now, when we talk about management, or when we talk about the new modern applications, I can already see people going, oh, He's going to start talking about Kubernetes again, isn't he? Now, we are going to talk about Kubernetes, but I'm just going to share a couple of slides with you, and it's something that really brought home for me the value of us running not just virtual machine workloads on our HCI platform, but also running container workloads. So let's get into that. Most of us, I think, can relate to what's going on the left-hand side of the screen here. We build a virtual machine, or we deploy a virtual machine. We install the guest operating system. We install an application, and it's a monolithic application, so it's very straightforward. It's like an ISO or an XE or something like that. And we have a whole bunch of day two operations around that. We have templates. We have customization specifications. We can store it in a content library. And just with a few Power CLI commands or even Ansible commands, or as a friend of mine in the audience would go, clicky, clicky on the UI, we can deploy out that application very simply. So now you're thinking, well, why do I want to move away from that? Why do I want to move to this new modern application? And the answer is you don't have any choice, because this is where developers are moving towards. They're moving towards what's on the right-hand side of the screen here. Now, there may still be virtual machines involved. There may also be these functions, or also referred to as serverless, where part of the application is offloaded to a third-party cloud, for example. But invariably, what you're going to have is a bunch of containers that are going to do probably the majority of this new modern application. And here, you're going to need something that's going to manage, orchestrate, scale in and scale out these different parts of the application. And the orchestration framework that has won that battle would seem to be Kubernetes. And this is why we're so, we're getting so involved in that space. And actually what brought it home to me is we can describe an application. Let's assume that on the right-hand side of the screen, this is an online bookstore. Now we might use VMs for persisting data, like let's say, for instance, the list of books, and also maybe the customer billing information. And this could be Cassandra from our friends at DataStax that we just saw. On the center of the screen then, we might just, the container part, that might be the front office, or the online bookstore that has the load balancers, the web servers, the stuff that doesn't need to write to disk, what's typically referred to as the stateless part of the application. And that can be scaled in and out using Kubernetes. The right-hand, the functions then, the stateless part, that could be, you get the idea. If you select a book and you put it in your basket, immediately you get this thing, oh, customers who bought that book, well, they also bought these books. So that could be a function that's run somewhere else, crunching analytics for you and giving you a result. And the thing is, that's run so infrequently, you probably don't want to run it on your own infrastructure. You may want to run it somewhere else and just subscribe to it and pay for it as you use it. So that's kind of what brought it home to me. And it's developers that are able to use these, no longer working on this monolithic application, but working on this application that's broken out into multiple services, multiple components. They're able to work a lot quicker on this. They're able to fail faster. They're able to produce newer versions of the application much more quickly. Now, you might turn to yourself, yeah, Cormac, you look like you've got an honest face. We sort of believe you. Do you have any data that backs that up? So here is based on a prediction from IDC, which are telling us that in the next 5 years, we're going to see as many applications deployed as we've seen in the last 40, if not more. And what's driving this is developers breaking out these monolithic applications into much smaller components, being able to fail faster, and so on. Now, the next question you're going to go is, why haven't VMware told us about this sooner? Well, actually, we've been working in the background on a lot of things in this space. Just out of a show of hands, anyone here using vSphere integrated containers? Anyone use that? Really? Okay. Okay. So what vSphere integrated containers is essentially a Docker API endpoint that we can give off to the developers so that they think they're working on Docker, but at the back end, we still had virtual machines. So we had the agility for developers to use containers use Docker, or think they're using Docker, but at the back end, we still had the isolation and the security of a virtual machine, and you could still continue to do your day 2 operations on those virtual machines. Now, the other thing you might mention, or you might remember from the last slide, I mentioned that we were using containers as stateless applications, or for stateless applications. So there was nothing being written to disk. Now, there was a big myth a couple of years ago that containers were only for stateless applications. And that it quickly became apparent that that was actually a myth. And 7 of the top 10 containerized or Dockerized, if that's even a word, applications today are using stateful, or are stateful. So they need to write to disk in some way, shape, or form. And that's what Project Hatchway was a way of allowing these Docker containers to write to vSphere storage. Now that has we continue to build on that. We have new drivers that allow Kubernetes to write to vSphere storage, but we've also enhanced that through a product we're calling Cloud Native Storage, and that's going to be the next demo that I show you, which is where we're bubbling up how Kubernetes is consuming vSphere storage and showing that in the vSphere UI. Now, the other thing that we've been working on, we've had this product PKS for some time. This is really the easy button for deploying Kubernetes on vSphere. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because now we have that fully integrated with Cloud Foundation as well. So you get a really simple deployment mechanism. And believe me, I've spent a lot of time in the lab trying to get the various parts like NSXT, PKS, vSAN all working together. It's no mean feat. So to have it, being able to deploy that quite easily through Cloud Foundation is really something quite good. And last but not least, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but project specific, in a nutshell, if I could describe it as the trying to deploy virtual machine workloads and container workloads natively on vSphere infrastructure, and I'm sure you're already after hearing a lot about that. So I just want to touch back on the enterprise PKS part, because as I said, I spent an awful lot of time just setting this up manually myself. Now we did have enterprise PKS supported in Cloud Foundation already, but there were still some manual steps involved, especially around the NSXT part when you have to set up the T0 routers, T1 routers, logical switches. There's a lot in there. And the reason there's a lot in there is that your Kubernetes worker nodes and master nodes need to get IP addresses. Your containers, as you deploy them for your applications, they need to get segmented and get their own set of IP addresses. And then, of course, you need to be able to expose services to the outside world. So there's a lot of networking complexity here. So it's really good to see this nice turnkey, easy button solution. And this is the most elegant way of deploying Kubernetes clusters on vSphere today. So that brings me to my first demo. If we could maybe roll the first demo. So this is our cloud native storage solution. And what I have here already is a Kubernetes cluster. And so we're going to go with the paradigm that we have deployed a Kubernetes cluster, and the application developers have done some nice applications for us. And it's all running live, and everybody is really happy. And now you get a call that says, you know what, a certain part of the application, it's not performing as well as expected. The developers have checked the code. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the code. So it must be an infrastructure problem. Over to you. So here's our Kubernetes cluster. And so the first thing you might think, okay, these guys are probably after filling up my vSAN data store. It is a vSAN cluster as well, by the way. So we can pop in here to monitor, and we'll come down and we'll just see whether those pesky developers have actually filled up the data store, as they said. And no, actually, they have been behaving themselves. So it's not the data store is being filled. But what we can now do, and by the way, this is 6.7U3. This is already available since the August release of vSphere. What we can do is we can actually break out the consumption to tell us how much of the data store is being consumed by virtual machines and how much of the data store is being consumed by container volumes, which is really quite neat. But obviously, there's no issue here with the capacity side of things. So let's delve straight into cloud native storage, or the CNS feature, and let's go and have a look at these persistent volumes, which are the volumes that are created by Kubernetes. And goodness gracious me, these guys have been busy. There's an awful lot of stuff here. How can I actually narrow down what the issue is? The first thing I'll tell you about Kubernetes is that you'll find labels everywhere. So one of the things we are bubbling up into vSphere are the labels. So you can see all of the labels associated with each of the persistent volumes, just to give you good insight. So this one here is, looks like it's Mongo or something. So that's not really what we're interested in. We've had a follow-on conversation with the developers, and it seems like it is the Cassandra part of the application that is giving us some sort of problems. So let's go in here and we can have a look, and we can just filter out on all of the persistent volumes that are related to Cassandra. And, funnily enough, there's only one. So this looks like a really small Cassandra deployment. So you have a conversation with the developers again and say, well, why don't we try and scale this out? It's what Kubernetes is all about. Let's build out a larger application on the Cassandra side of things. So what we can do then is we can go into, let's put on our developer hat, let's say, and we'll go into the Kubernetes cluster. And this is called the Kubernetes dashboard, and this is where you can do operations on Kubernetes. And what's interesting, well, we'll just separate it out here into, let's go into the Cassandra namespace. Namespaces are just a way of sort of isolating applications in Kubernetes. And so we can see that it is a single pod. It is also a stateful set, which means as we scale out this application, both the compute and the storage scale out at the same time. Now, we can also look at the storage that's associated with this. We have a concept called persistent volume claims in Kubernetes, which is a way of dynamically creating storage on behalf of applications. And there's only a single persistent volume. What's interesting, though, is the ID that's used here is exactly the same as the ID that we've bubbled up in the CNS UI. So let's go back to the stateful set. We know right now that it's just a single instance of the stateful set. And here we can drill down into that stateful set. And we can see various information, but our objective here now is to scale out this application. So we're going to scale it out from 1 to 3, like so. And in the interest of time, I'll very quickly just refresh these. There's the second one coming up. That's now available, and now we'll get the third one coming up. So now what we've done in the hope of addressing the performance issue is we've scaled the application that seems to be the source of contention. If we now jump back into I was going to have a look at, make sure that we also extended the storage. So yes, we have 3 pods, and we now have 3 persistent volumes as well. So now, if we head back to vSphere and we refresh this view, we can also see that there are 3 persistent volumes visible there as well. Not only that now, we can also get details about each of the persistent volumes. And because we have Kubernetes deployed as a cluster, or as a set of VMs, the Kubernetes cluster is deployed as a set of VMs, you can imagine there could be very many clusters deployed on this vSphere infrastructure. Your production, your UAT, your test and dev, they could all be there. So this is a way of differentiating that. What's also nice is the fact that it tells you which virtual machine that this persistent volume is attached to. So when you're dealing with Kubernetes and containers, the containers will be instantiated in a virtual machine called a worker, and then the persistent volume will be attached to that. What is also very nice is I can click on the persistent volume, and this is because it's on a vSAN data store. It's going to take me directly to the virtual objects view, so I can see a breakdown of the health and so on. Last but not least, because it's on vSAN once again, I can view the placement details, and it shows me exactly what type of layout this persistent volume is, where the different components reside, on which disks, on which hosts and stuff. So now what we have through CNS is the visibility to go directly from a persistent volume in Kubernetes to a VMDK sitting on some vSphere storage, and if that storage is vSAN, we can drill down all the way to the individual components. It's pretty cool, huh? Now, we don't have time for applause, so please keep it to the end, okay? Can we go back to the slides, please? No. So we have to move swiftly on. Let's go and talk about the expandable infrastructure options now. This, I think, for me, is the coolest thing that we've been doing for some time, and these are flexible or composable infrastructure from our partners. Now, if you're a HPE shop, you'll be aware of the Synergy range. If you're coming from the Dell side of the house, you might be aware of the Kinetic range. So these are frames of decoupled compute and storage where you can carve out t-shirt size servers for your own use. Now, having said that, there's a lot of use cases that you could do here. For me, the main use case is that you can start very small and then you can scale out as the needs require, but you can scale out in the confidence that your new servers are going to be completely compatible with the previous servers. No issues with driver versions, firmware versions, device compatibility, anything like that. Also on that, the use cases, that one that springs to mind for me, and it's a common issue with HCI, is that we have a lot of the times either under-provisioned servers or over-provisioned servers. In other words, you have your HCI servers are stressed, or there's a whole bunch of stranded space, one or the other. What these allow you to do is dynamically reconfigure the t-shirt size if you've undersized or oversized your servers. And completely integrated with Cloud Foundation, the Dell EMC MX7000 wasn't fully qualified at VMworld in the US, but we fully qualified that now as well. So really interesting solution for sure. Now, we spoke a lot to our customers, and a lot of our customers are telling us we want to concentrate more and more on the application level. We're actually looking for somebody to take care of the infrastructure level. So now we're announcing VMware Cloud on Dell EMC for on-premises, whether that is your data center or at the edge. And so you give us a call, we'll come in, we'll rack and stack the environment, we'll configure it, we'll deploy it, we'll do everything that's required. We will do the maintenance and the updating and the support as well. We'll deal with all the support requests. So that allows you, the customer, just to focus on the application layer. So very interesting. HCI as a service, I believe Pat referred to it as data center as a service this morning. Now, this is available currently in the US, but we will have it soon in EMEA as well. The other thing our customers have spoken to us about, they really like the idea of Cloud Foundation. However, there is a bit of a stumbling block, and that is where they're unable to consume existing infrastructure. Our Cloud Foundation was unable to consume the existing infrastructure. And this was a real pain point, especially if you've gone to a lot of cost and investment in your storage infrastructure and your networking infrastructure. So now we're relaxing that. We're allowing you through Cloud Foundation to consume existing infrastructure in your environment. Now, this is not for the management domains. The management domain continues to be vSAN, but for your workload domains, you can certainly consume the other storage types that's in the vSphere portfolio. What is interesting for me is the fact that we now support vVols as well as a consumption model. So now you could have vSAN in your workload domains, you could have vVols in your workload domains, but you would have a single control plane, the storage policy-based management, to consume either or. So I think that's very nice. On the topic of vVols, vVols, if you're not aware, does two things really well. It allows you to consume array-based features at the granularity of a VM, and it allows you to consume those features through policies. So it gives me great pleasure to announce a tech preview of Site Recovery Manager being able to orchestrate failover of VMs on vVols. So this is in tech preview right now. It's something I know a lot of our vVol customers have been waiting for, and it is the topic of my next demo. So let me just crack on into the next demo. And I just need to fill them in. Give me a moment. Great. So I'll go through this very quickly because we don't have time to go and set everything up here. But what I have here is a primary site, and I'm very interested in this Marketing EMEA virtual machine. And I want to do a failover of that Marketing EMEA virtual machine to a secondary site. Oh, beg your pardon. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go through Site Recovery Manager. Site Recovery Manager has already been configured. We obviously wouldn't have time to go through all of that, but the sites have been paired and the replication is already there in the arrays. So we look at our recovery plans. We're very interested in this recovery plan because this is where my virtual machine exists. And you can see that I have one virtual machine, and that's the one, Marketing EMEA, that I wish to transition over. You can also look at the protection groups, and the only thing I wanted to show you here, that the protection type is a new one called virtual volumes. And in the interest of time, I'll just move along, and we will run the recovery plan that is going to do a planned migration of this individual virtual machine to the other site. So we'll run that like so. Obviously, it's sped up in the interest of time, but hopefully you get the idea in that we now can work on a virtual machine granularity when we're doing these failovers. So that's the failover. If we look at the Marketing EMEA VM, it's now on the secondary data center. It is already powering up. And if we just pop back over to the primary data center, you can see that it's currently powered off. So that's what vVols is giving you. In the past, it would have been failing over at the LUN or volume granularity. Now we can do it at the per VM granularity. So I'm going to reset this environment. I'm going to bring that virtual machine back, but I'm also going to introduce a new virtual machine, and I just want to show you how easy it is to add that virtual machine to the already existing replication. So here's the virtual machine that we're interested in, Marketing EMEA 2. So you can see at the moment there's no storage policies or anything associated with it, but it's also on local storage. So what we're going to do is we're going to migrate this to a virtual volume. If I could find it here. There we go. And I'm going to just change the storage only for a storage vMotion. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a policy that has vVol replication associated with it. So it's all for my marketing VM. So I'm going to pick that storage policy, and it's currently incompatible because it's sitting on local storage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to the compatible data store here. And because I want to group all of these virtual machines together, I'm going to pick a particular replication group. Next, finish, and that is it. So now what you can see, it has a storage policy for virtual volumes. It is compliant. It's got this replication group, and it's on a vVol data store. So now if I go back to SRM, I can see now that I have 2 virtual machines associated with this recovery plan. So as simple as that. And again, if we could just go back to the slides, I only have one more thing to show you before I bring John back on stage. And this is one new feature. And you might be aware that we already do DR as a service, and what we're hearing from our customers is that this is excellent for their tier 1 workloads, but DR as a service requires an SDDC to be stood up in VMware Cloud on AWS. And so what we're doing is we're replicating to that SDDC in the cloud. Now, what our customers are telling us for tier 2 and tier 3 workloads, it's really cost prohibitive to just have those things stood up in the cloud constantly. Can you come up with another solution? So we are coming up with another solution. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the replication mechanism that we have already, but now we're going to replicate to a low-cost, elastic cloud storage solution. Now, in the event of a DR scenario or a planned migration, what we will do is we will stand up a just-in-time SDDC. We will rehydrate the data that we've already copied over to this cloud storage, and then we will reattach those VMDKs to the just-in-time SDDC that we just stood up. Now, you can imagine the recovery time objective, or the RTO, is going to be really extended for that compared to the performance optimized method. But what customers are telling us for the tier 2 and tier 3 workloads, which would be nice to have in the event of a DR scenario, this is acceptable. So that's me finished. I'm going to invite John back on stage now, and we're going to run through the enhanced management and operations section.
Fantastic. Thanks, Cormac. Stay here. So I'm just going to do a quick couple slides, and I'm going to turn it back to Cormac for another demo. Always much more interesting. So as we think about our North Star around management, management's a critical part of this whole idea of hyperconverged infrastructure. We want to deliver a consistent management plane for hyperconverged for both cloud workloads, but also on-prem workloads. And we want to make sure that that's something that can run both as a cloud service, but also as an on-prem set of software as well. Because we realize that there's not one size fits all, and there's a key question around choice and deployment models. And as we think about that idea of managing across these multiple environments, there's a couple of key things that we're really focused on. And really, ultimately, though, about how do we make it easy? How do we make management easy? And it's a couple of things we're working on. One is getting a unified set of management, so you have that single global view of your infrastructure. Second is bringing more automation end to end, bringing APIs across the entire stack and bringing more automation for that entire stack. But I think most interesting is the last one, which is bringing intelligence into the infrastructure. Leveraging some of these ideas that were talked about today in the keynote around self-driving infrastructure, self-optimizing, and building intelligence into the platform itself so it can understand what's happening with the applications and the workloads and actually go optimize the infrastructure to provide the right kind of outcomes and capabilities. Right? So that's what we did demo today in the keynote. We talked about actually and launched a year ago is this idea of Project Magna. And Project Magna is really built around this idea of a self-driving infrastructure, using tools and techniques from artificial intelligence, things like reinforcement learning, to learn and optimize the infrastructure as it goes. And what we have is a great set of data that can go feed those models, right? We now have a Skyline support model. Hopefully all of you are using Skyline. It's a great free part of our support offer that can help provide proactive information. And we can use that data now to start build these models, or our ops data or automation data to start build these models and build these reinforcement models. So Project Magna is really our approach to start to build some techniques and capabilities around building this self-driving infrastructure. So what I'd like to do now is turn it back over to Cormac to go through a demo of Project Magna.
So if we could just roll the last demo, please. So this is Project Magna. You may have seen it this morning. As John says, it's essentially using machine learning to figure out whether there's something that we can do on vSphere infrastructure or automate it. This is actually the self-tuning section of that. So if we come back to the initial problem where our developer came to us and said, oh, things are running slow, well, you may first of all go to VROps, and this is what we're showing here. And what you can see is that there's some read latency issues. Now, this might just be a spike. It might be something that's short-lived, but it's something that's still impacting the business. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill into Magna here. Now, this is where we're able to see information from Magna as long as we're associated with it in some way. We don't actually necessarily have Magna automate tasks or actions. You can still use it and be associated with it and figure out whether your KPIs match what the rest of the industry are seeing. And so we can see here that there's, at this point in time at least, there's definitely there's a decrease in performance, and our KPIs are much lower than what the industry average is, and also much lower than what the industry average is when they have Magna enabled. In other words, the self-tuning is taking place. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and enable Magna, and there are 3 different KPIs that we can set up. There is read performance. So our KPIs could be set for read performance, for write performance, or for a balanced workload. Now we saw that it was a read latency issue, so we'll just go ahead and we'll enable Magna there for the read latency KPIs or read performance KPIs. And if I give this a quick refresh in the interest of time as well, we can see now that already the performance has improved. And what these dots are indicating are self-tuning. Now you can imagine that if you were the VI admin and you had to go and tune this yourself, how long and how painstaking this would be, because you only ever try and change one thing at a time when you're performance tuning. But this is what Magna is doing for us, and every time it makes a change, it looks at a rewards value to see whether things have improved, and if things have improved, excellent, that's what it's going to keep. Now we can go down and see exactly what it did. If we drop down here, this will not be the end of what it looks like when it finally goes GA, but this is just a mock-up to give us some idea of what's going on. But here we can see that we are actually allocating memory to the read cache, the local read cache on vSAN. But we're also deallocating it, because guess what happened? The spike that we had has now gone away. So do I need to keep allocating these resources? No, I don't. So let's free them up again. So that's essentially Magna in a nutshell.
Great, thanks Cormac, that's fantastic. Yeah. Good. And so if we can switch back to the slides.
I mean, the moment you've all been waiting for is coming up, right? Who's won the prizes? Who's won the prizes?
We're almost there. Yeah. And so really what we've done with Project Magna is take and extend Cloud Foundation and start really making it an intelligent, self-driving hybrid cloud platform. Right? So that's the goal. Thanks, Cormac. So I'll close the presentation, and then I'll turn it over to Cormac for the prizes. But I'll close the presentation by, again, just emphasizing the 3 points that we want to highlight today, which is really thinking about HCI as a path for unlocking the hybrid cloud through full stack HCI, but that we can get there at your own pace, starting with a core HCI of compute and storage and growing over time into this full stack. And yet this can be a platform to support all your workloads, both your traditional and your new workloads. And I want to thank all of you for coming today. Hopefully we're able to offer some new insight into how we think about the hyperconverged market and what we're doing as VMware. So thank you very much for your time today.
All right, so just before we get to the prizes, these are just some of the call to actions that we have. Please come and see us at the Meet the Experts, talk about vSAN, HCI, VCF, all that good stuff. There's some really good sessions. If I do say so myself, one of them is mine.
Great sessions.
Yeah, go and check those out as well. And lastly, we have a lot of stuff in the hands-on labs, so go and check that out as well. Okay, now I won't hold you any longer. To know if you've won a prize, please check under your seat, see if you've got a ticket, and then come over to the left-hand side here, please, at the end, and claim your prize. And with that, folks, best of luck. Thank you very much.